Well, welcome, Angela. Welcome to Travel Connections.
Thank you, Suzanne. It is so good to be here and to talk with you again.
Well, thank you. Your schedule is crazy, but I'm so happy that you were able to fit us in. So thank
Well,
you.
this was an important podcast, so I wanted to be here.
Well, as it turns out, I am realizing that you are the only person that has been on Travel Connections 3 times.
You mentioned that, and I thought maybe I'm inducted now into the
Um,
Suzanne Stavert Hall of Fame
I
because
think
I
you
am
are.
like so honored to
I think
be.
you are.
But we have
Yes.
so much to talk about, and I feel like we always even leave the conversation with more to talk about. So many things in
That's
common.
that's what happened. So what happened is I had been to Kentucky for the first time and I decided I had to do a Kentucky bourbon trail with the stories of the people who lived in Kentucky. And
Mm-hmm.
you came on and we talked about your novels at the time. And then
Mm-hmm.
you hinted at something about Italy. And we have this Italian connection that people didn't
Yes.
know about. So then you came back and talked about your first book about Italy, which is restored in Tuscany. But
Yes.
today we're here to talk about your newest book, Village Life.
Village life, yes.
My God, it's so amazing. But I think to give a little background to those
Yeah,
people that don't really know what I'm talking about, could we start maybe talking a little bit about your first book, Restored in Tuscany,
sure.
how you got there,
Absolutely.
then
Yes,
then about your
absolutely.
current book. Oh,
Yes, yes. So
tell us.
all of my books actually are connected, which is the crazy thing. There is a through line to all of those. But when I was working on my second fiction book, I set part of the fiction, the last two books in the trilogy, in Montefollonico, this little medieval village in southern Tuscany. And I found it through just an online search. I found this very charming apartment that looked beautiful. And the thing that was so attractive is I was just at a really difficult time in my life. I was very grief stricken and tired and just pulled in so many different directions, as all we women are many times in our lives. And I just wanted to get ahead of this book. I wanted to get in this book and needed 2 weeks to stay in one place. And I wanted to set part of it in Tuscany. And I think part of me just was longing for Italy. We had gone there on our honeymoon and been back multiple times. And I dipped into Tuscany a few times, but not really. And so I wanted to spend time there and just see. I actually didn't know if a village even existed where you could park your car and go to the grocery and go to the bar for a coffee and go to a restaurant. I didn't even know if that existed anymore. And so I found this little village through the apartment. We came, stayed for 2 weeks, had the most incredible time, and then went back home and just longed to go back. So we did go back again the next year, the next year, the next year, the next year. And then we finally decided to start looking for a place. And so we found a place that we thought hit kind of all of our non-negotiable lists. So this story is recounted and restored in Tuscany, and ended up basically with a year-long renovation project. And so I wrote about that in Restored in Tuscany because it does even tie into the grief that I was experiencing, and more came later, and also just how we sometimes need a soul renovation, and that kind of becomes more obvious when you sort of see a house being torn down to the studs or torn down to the wall and all the plaster torn off. And then you just think, okay, that's kind of what needs to happen in my life. I've got to get back to peel everything off and get back to the things that are most important. So that's what Restored in Tuscany is about. And so then after this renovation, would you like me to go on into
Sure.
my village
Right.
life? Or
This is uh,
okay.
just such a great story. And give our listeners a backstory. I discovered Montefollonico in 2017, as it turns out. So I had discovered this medieval town also and fell in love with it for different reasons. And the
Hmm.
irony, and you and I met kind of happenstance on the street. I was
Yes.
walking back to my hotel, and
I remember it.
you and your husband were saying goodbye to friends that you'd had over for dinner. And you're like, and Jess was like, "Hi, how are you?" And it has this big, lovely voice, and you were so sweet. And it was like one thing led to another and an email, and that's how you came on the
Yes.
podcast. But it is a magical place. And
Yes.
it doesn't shock me at all that it would heal you, number one, help
Mm,
to heal
mm,
you, and then
mm-hmm.
take you on this journey. And I remember when you were on the podcast the second time, when we talked about Restored in Tuscany, you hinted that there was something in the future. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
saying to you, "Oh, Angela, there's got to be another book in this." And you just kind of gave me your Cheshire grin, and you're like, hmm. So here we are. I do have your newest book
Oh,
for those
yeah.
people that are watching. Uh, it's gorgeous. So,
Oh,
okay, tell me how you now moved on and you thought, okay, I need to keep going. Thank goodness, because
yes.
Dan was really anxious.
Yeah. I so we bought the house, renovated the house, did all of that, and then we're here. So we're coming, in the spring and the fall. But even through the renovation, I want to back up just a step. I am a writer, I'm a storyteller. And so anytime I go on an adventure of any kind, I'm taking notes because I always feel like there's a story in it. Back when I was single many, many years ago, I would take any blind date somebody set me up with, partly because I knew I would get, if I didn't meet the love of my life, I would get a very humorous story out of it. And I did most of the time. And so I'm just one of these, I always like to take notes on any kind of adventure. So I did that through Restored. And there were a lot of things I discovered as we began to be a part of this community that were very curious to me. And just as a student of different cultures, and appreciating different cultures. I made lots of notes and just wrote down some stories about this thing happening and that thing happening. And so I feel like that actually is where village life began because there were so many things, and even things that were cut from Restored in Tuscany because I just couldn't include everything. And then we built on that, and I didn't know exactly. Probably part of why I was being so cryptic when you were asking me about it is I didn't exactly know what it was going to be. I just knew I had these stories, and I knew there was something to do with them. And then it wasn't until I think I sold Restored in Tuscany, my publisher, Twin Peaks Press, which is an imprint of Harvest House, wanted three books. And so they actually wanted this second book and kind of a lifestyle coffee table book. And so then that's when I thought, okay, this is where these stories go. This is how this comes together. Had no idea how to do what they called a coffee table book. And then I've got a cookbook that I'm actually working on now, which is a whole other conversation. But yeah, so it all kind of came together like that. But then there was the idea of how to construct it, how to, as my editors and my editor friends always say, there has to be a through line. You have to have something that's drawing, the whole way through. And so I think it was just for me, it was a love and appreciation for this community in particular, but I think even village life in general, wherever, I mean, we can have village life wherever we are. Even in a big city, you can have a small community and you can check on each other, look after each other. There can be many of these things that we've learned to experience here taken home. And so I think that was the biggest lesson for me is that it really can be anywhere. But just all of those things then being put into the how to construct it. And so I don't know, it finally kind of it was a little there was a bit of wrangling, mental wrangling on my end, and then talking with friends and publishers just to kind of get that through line. But I do feel like it kind of it has a good pace to it, I think, and just around all of the things that have really impacted me.
Well, it did. It it touched my heart, it fed my soul, but at the same time, you informed me. I think it's
Mm,
really great how you talk about greetings, how people greet each other, how you divide it. It's a little bit of Italian. You learn Italian. You have a
mhm.
glossary in the back. There's recipes. I mean, it's really, really well thought. Uh,
Well,
I
thank you.
I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, for example, in the beginning, you have 21. We don't have time to talk about 21 chapters. However, but you start with vicino, which is the neighbor, right?
Hmm.
And you
Yes.
explain what it's like and why being a neighbor is so important. Italians have very specific feelings about things. Do you want to touch on that and just how you should do things in a village? It's great.
Yeah. I mean, we live on a farm in Kentucky, and so our neighbors are a bit away. And I mean, we can see a couple of houses around. They're not close. And so there is, when you live in a small village, and your walls literally connect, and you hear your neighbors having conversations. You hear many things that you don't normally hear. I wouldn't normally hear on a farm, and just the way that you treat each other and respect each other. There's sort of a level of, you don't you're just thinking about, is my light shining into my neighbor's bedroom? Or, is my husband always loves to go, our next door neighbors on one side are elderly, and he loves to get here and go and help them mow their yard. That's just sort of his love language, is to do something, and then we always in return get a bottle of Prosecco. So it's just sort of our little thing that we love to do. It's just sort of a gift of love. They love it. We give a gift, they love us back, and that's how it always is in Italy. There's always something in it that comes back. Not that you do it for that reason. It just is the way that they are. But just even, where you're parking your car, and just all of the little things that you think about, is this so and so's cat? And, and giving somebody's cat some water, leaving a little water dish out. You've seen that, I'm sure. Just all the little details. And of course, there are, I'm sure, times, I haven't witnessed it much, but I'm sure there are times when people that live here all the time get irritated with each other. But I actually rarely see that side of things. But then again, conflict is a normal part of relationships. And so what you have, when you're that close, you have to work it out, because you're going to see that person every day. So in a way, that's really the beauty of it, because you are in close proximity. And when something happens to you, or your neighbor needs help, you're there. They're there for you. You're there for them. And so that's just something beautiful too. So we have just so enjoyed being a part of this community, and living. We would not, for us, because we live on a farm in Kentucky, we would not want to live out in the countryside here. That's us, just because we get that at home. So here we love having this completely other experience by being in a village.
I love that. Well, I love the village and I've been going there for years and I've had the opportunity to stay there for a week or 2 weeks. And it is a incredible place with lovely people. And there are rules. So
Yes.
there are in a good way. It's like behavior uh, points, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
I think it's really fun. I think you mentioned in one of the chapters about um like walking to the grocery store, which is called the alimentary.
Hmm.
And you have to account for a little more time in a small village. You
Yes.
might stop 2 or 3 times and you're only
Yes.
going, what, 100 yards or something like
Yes.
that. Tell me about that. It's small
Yes. I
village
mean, it,
life.
it is, it is so true. I have learned to build in margin in
Hmm.
everything I do, whether it be walking to the car to go to a neighboring town, or walking to the elementary, walking to the bar. There's always going to be, I don't, the only time you might not run into somebody is if you go during the lunch hour when everybody's tucked away and eating their lunch. That's like the only time you might not see many people. But then we're usually eating our lunch too. So we're not out.
But you're not
But
out and about.
yeah. And it's just so lovely because I've had so many conversations on the way to the alimentary or in the alimentary or coming back from there. And it can be anything from someone telling me their health issues or, asking how long we're going to stay to, um, I was walking out yesterday and I saw a neighbor who had lost her husband, and literally we just shed some tears, and that, that I would not want to have not shared that moment because I was too busy and had to be somewhere at a certain time. So you always want to build that in, and there's just a richness in that.
I think it's lovely. We live in the US. I'm speaking for living outside a big city. I live outside of Seattle, and it's a big city. It's a fast pace. That is not a fast pace in Montefollonico. And I think
Uh-uh.
people, number one, may not even have any idea what it's like to live in a slower pace
Uh-uh.
or have that kind of connection with people. And I
Uh-huh.
love that you offered that to people because they may not even understand this way of life actually exists.
Hmm.
I wanted to compliment you on how you spoke about Trilogy Gobi, which is the restaurant in this town, and Albo's limoncello recipe
Ah,
is
yes.
in your book. And your recipes are phenomenal. I was like, oh my gosh, I told my husband yesterday, I'm like, did you know that Angela included this? You did such a beautiful job talking about it, the
Well,
importance of this.
yeah. Well, that I have to give the credit to my editor at that point because and it was literally about 2 months before my deadline. We had been gathering all this photography, and then I'd been doing all the writing, and so we had been talking along the way, and so she had just reviewed the most recent draft, and she said, I feel like there's so much food conversation in this book that we have got to provide your readers with recipes. And it's so true. She was spot on because I do feel like we talk so much about food and around food. And it was the perfect addition, I think, to add those recipes to the book. And then even the Bring Italy Home ideas, she had that idea as well. So I can't take credit for that. And that was really fun to do, to organize and to think, okay, I want something for people to read, to listen, to watch, try to engage multiple senses. And so that was so fun to pull together.
Can you expand on that? So at the end of each chapter, you make
Yeah.
suggestions, kind of how to bring Italy home to you. I
Yes.
love that because not everyone can travel to Italy.
Or even want to travel to
Or
Italy.
even want to. They're armchair
Yes.
travelers. So
Yes.
can you expand on that
Yeah,
a little bit?
so the thing that was fun about it is, we could have gone lots of directions with it, but the way I had already, for our guests that come and stay here at our house, our friends and family, I had already compiled a list of books and movies to read and watch because for me, when I travel, I want to immerse myself. I want to know the culture. I want to sort of get the feeling of the place before I go. And so I thought, okay, let's pull in all of those. Let's all the books and all the movies that we want to include, and then let's think about Luciano Pavarotti and Andrea Bocelli and various singers that we would want to include, and Federico Fellini movies for those that might like that, and just kind of pulling in any little thing, and each one's a little different. Each chapter might have a slightly different, and sometimes the Bring Home Italy ideas aren't necessarily connected to that chapter, but they're just ways to just get a little bit of the La Dolce Vita without having to go to Italy. Or maybe you're just in between trips. Maybe you go every 5 years or maybe every 10 years and you just want to live a little of that in the meantime. So that was just such a fun thing. And in fact, I feel like I could expand on that and collect more and more because even since the book came out, I've gathered a few more ideas that, so maybe we'll do something in the future. But it was just a fun process.
Well, it was lovely because you did all the work. You brought in all the titles of the books and the films and just the idea and the philosophy. You had quotes, beautiful quotes, that really tie it all together. And I think really open this world up for people who don't know anything about village life. It's such a beautiful book, Angela. The font, the photography, the colors of the pages.
Yes, they
Everything.
did. Well, they did such a beautiful job. I mean, truly, when I saw it after they laid it out, I was
Did
I
you
was like, wow,
cry?
this is exceeding my expectations, truly.
It's absolutely beautiful. I write here, bring Italy home. I had written that in my notes. Well, one of the chapters is Vi aspettiamo. And I
Yes,
wanted you to explain that story or to share that
yes,
story. It was
yes.
so cute. And I'm
Yeah.
learning Italian. I've been doing it for a while. So a lot of this is familiar to me, but it is not
Yes.
to our listeners. Such a cute
Right.
story. So tell us about
Yes. And I probably wouldn't have known until I kind of got a little bit more familiar with Italian. But so I called and with friends of ours and booked a reservation for dinner. And she answered back in Italian, Vi aspettiamo, which means we wait for you. And I thought, they're waiting for me. And for a moment, it confused me because I thought, are they waiting? Like, does she think we're supposed to come tonight? Maybe I didn't clarify that. So I kind of went back and looked, and I think I texted her and said, I just want to confirm we're talking about blah, blah, blah. And she said, yes, sì, vi aspettiamo. And then I realized, that I was hearing that other places. And so it's just sort of this way of it's sort of this level of hospitality that says we not only we are waiting for you, we are anticipating your arrival. And I think I wrote in the book, I mean, it has the feeling of they're just standing at the door, like we cannot
it.
wait to see you here. Obviously, they go on, they've got stuff to do,
Right.
but you had this feeling of being so anticipated. That's a word I keep coming to when I think of hospitality, is just this sense of anticipation. And I just thought, we do hospitality businesses in Kentucky. And I thought, how that's such a great way to think about it. How do we anticipate our guests? How do we anticipate people that walk in the restaurants, even guests that come to my home? How can I anticipate that person in a way that they feel that I've been longing for them to come? I'm so happy they're here. And anyway, it was just a fun, and it was that came home again. We were actually getting ready to take a little vacation, and I'd made a hotel booking, and I got an email from the hotel, and it was in English, but it said, "We wait for you." And I thought, I just love it. I just love that concept. So it's in southern Italy as well, not just Tuscany.
Right. So it's this prolific way of thinking. And when I moved to the Northwest, most of my family and friends are in California. So
Yes.
we had a lot of visitors in the first few years. And as a hostess, and I know you are just like this, I try to anticipate what they would like to have. What is their beverage in the morning?
Yes.
Fresh flowers on the nightstand, books that
Yes.
I've read, things like that. And I think the
Yes.
Italians feel the same way. They anticipate what you might enjoy. They love to teach you things. They get this
Yes.
twinkle in their eye. I'm
Yes.
sure when you were going to them to ask to use their recipes, was that a fun experience? I bet they were thrilled.
Well, yes, it was, but it was also such an interesting experience, which I will talk more about when I do the cookbook because I have had
Okay.
it on steroids with
Okay.
that. But the funny thing, happy to share the recipe. The challenge is that in Italy, or at least this part of Italy that I'm so familiar with, there really aren't things written down that much, or it's this thing called QB, quanto basta, which means um to taste as needed, when
Enough.
when
Whatever's
it's
enough.
enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever's enough. Yeah, exactly. That translated, that's exactly.
Right.
And so so when you go to get a recipe, it's a little tricky because you're getting kind of generally what it is. And so I've always had to have somebody at home test this out,
Yeah.
because, and then you're having to convert from grams and all that to teaspoons and cups. And so it's a little tricky, but it was fun. But yes, they were very happy about it. And, but it was just a little bit more work on my end to navigate.
To get it right.
Yes, to get it
Yeah.
right. Yeah, which is, yeah, because you want it to be right. So,
You had great recipe testers, I understand. So I think that
yes,
was super helpful. Well, one of
yes,
the chapters was aperitivo. And my
yes.
husband, so we were just in Montefollonico. We missed you. And by the way,
Oh,
you're sitting behind this gorgeous stone wall and you are in
yes,
the actual home that you renovated in your first book. And it's
yes,
so
that's
lovely.
right.
But he's like, what does aperitivo mean? But it's very
Yeah,
specific what you drink,
it
when you
is.
drink it. Can you
Yes,
touch on that? Because we've adapted that here.
yes, yeah, yeah. It's such a great idea. Well, aperitivo is sort of the closing of the day and the opening of the evening. That really is kind of what it represents. And as you close the day and open the evening, it's sort of to kind of get you ready for dinner, but it's also a time to see friends or fellowship a bit. It can stand on its own. It can also just be a precursor to dinner. I think traditionally that's what it's been. Starts here in the countryside, I would guess 6:30 is about normal for an aperitivo, and it goes to about 8-ish, maybe 8:30. So it's basically the hour and a half, maybe 2 hours between the end of the day before dinner, just to sit around. And it can be anything. It's generally a light wine like Prosecco or maybe a white wine. You can have red wine, obviously, but you wouldn't go for you wouldn't really have like the big, strong Brunello or something like that. You would save that for a hearty meal. But it would be generally a lighter wine, and usually it can be anything from just some cheese, and we often use crackers, although I don't often see that with the Italians, but crostini with, maybe a little bruschetta with the tomatoes, or crostini with liver if you like that. Or it can be something simple like olives and some meats and cheeses, salamis, cured meats. So you would never have pasta in aperitivo. It would always be kind of an antipasta or antipasto. So it's, yeah, it's usually kind of light. Now, some people go a little heavier, and it becomes more of a modern term called a pericena, means sort of a small dinner. Yeah. But I think, and traditionally, it's just something light to get you ready for the dinner.
It's just a lovely, lovely way to end the day and open up the evening, especially on a summer night in Montefollonico.
Yes.
It's just dreamy. Well, village life also is about, I have two more questions for you.
Yes.
So, village life is about, I don't know, slowing down. You live a really busy, busy life in Kentucky. You
Mm-hmm.
know that because I've known you now for years.
Uh-huh.
So, what do you think is so attractive about slow travel? I think it's a trend. It's certainly a trend for me. What do you think is so appealing about it?
Well, I think we all need it for one thing. I think our bodies need it. Our minds maybe don't know as much that we need it, but I think there's just something drawing us towards that, because there is just that gift of stopping and appreciating the beauty and everything going on around you, and taking everything in versus racing from one tourist site to another and just being hot and stuck in crowds and, eating some really bad food on a sidewalk somewhere because
Because you're
it's
rushing,
candy, because we're
Mhm.
rushing. And so I think there's always a tendency, I think especially as you're younger, maybe even more, there's a tendency to cross all these things off. Maybe the younger, I don't know, maybe the newer generations don't have that, but I'm a Gen X. So I feel like that's very much my personality. Um, and I don't know, I think we all are just, I think a lot of us are just desiring that. I'd rather just have an experience in one place, but let it go deep rather than just skimming the surface of many, many places.
100%. And for me, I think it's been a function of age. I've learned it as I've gotten older.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
and about the connections. To me, travel is about the connections that we make when we travel. And there's no better way to make a connection and to understand the authenticity of travel than to visit a village uh, in the middle of Tuscany. It's just
Yeah.
an extraordinary experience. So much so that I started my own tour company to bring
Yes.
people there.
I
So
love it.
it's just my treat to share Tuscany
Yeah.
with people.
Mhm.
It's just such a remarkable place. But this
Yes.
leads me to Raposo, which is one of your chapters. I only touched on a
Mhm.
few, so there's plenty more you can read. But can you speak to that a little bit? Because I loved your words in that chapter.
Yes. Yeah, the Reposo is such a gift and that I have started doing it a bit more in Kentucky
Mm,
because I just feel like we go and then there's just a point I almost feel in touch with my little childhood self where it's like you just need to kind of go in a cool, dark room and be quiet for a bit. And there is something lovely about being at home, having lunch, going in and lying down on the bed, on the couch for maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30, and just taking a cool little, even if you don't sleep, just to kind of shut your body down for a bit, try to shut your mind down for a bit. Something really rejuvenating about that. And then you feel so energized for the rest of the afternoon, which I love that. And the thing here, you don't see it in Rome or Venice or Florence quite as much, but here in the countryside, everybody pretty well honors that. I mean, it's the everything closes, the shops close. If you're unless you're in a heavy tourist site, but shops close around 1 o'clock, and then they don't open up until 3:30, 4, depending on 4:30 maybe, depending on their schedule. And so it kind of forces you. So I've had to. It was difficult to get used to that because I often in Kentucky would do all of my kind of home stuff in the morning, work, writing, whatever, go have lunch and then do my errands in the afternoon. Well, that is not possible here. So
no, it is not.
you have to structure your day around that. So your errands have to be in the morning or late afternoon, like 4-ish, but you're not going to there's nothing happening during that lunchtime. And I just think it's a wonderful practice. And it is harder when we don't live in a culture that takes a hour and a half, 2 or 3 hour lunch. But it's a wonderful practice to take a piece of that and try to, try to do a little bit of rest and just even reorganizing yourself. That was another thing I've learned is even if I don't go and take a rest, just to kind of organize the rest of the day or the next day. It's just a wonderful time to do that.
Yeah, I love that. And the Italians do it super well. I think other cultures do it as well. But I loved that chapter. Well, finally, you made this jump to live in two places and you have embraced this Italian village life. And now you've chronicled your stories here in village life. How has this whole experience changed you? Um, because not many of us get to do what you get to do. And
Right.
how do you feel about living in the two places?
It is, when I moved to the farm from the city, I learned that there are trade-offs in life. If we live in the city, we trade off tranquility and peace and quiet and for access to everything. If we live in the country, we trade off access to everything for nature and peace and tranquility and all of that. And so I do feel like choosing these two places, to be in two places, is a trade off because I'm not present fully in either all year. And so there are things I leave here wanting to do more of, or wanting relationships I didn't get around to seeing, or being with a person. And it's kind of the same in Kentucky. I'll leave Kentucky, and then I'll say, oh, we'll get together, in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever. But then I've also learned that that's actually not a bad thing, to have two communities that you love and have pieces of your heart. You expose yourself a bit more because you love people, and it's just like our little friend who lost her husband. And I'm not only now do I grieve people I know in Kentucky or beyond in the U.S., but I also grieve people in Italy. But that's just a wonderful thing when your heart opens up to just loving two places.
Right. Well, I can see that. I just think it enriches you and enriches your mind and it enriches your heart. And it just makes it allows you more people to love, which
Yeah.
that in itself is a lovely thing. And
Yes.
it's such a magical place, and you've done such a beautiful job sharing this with the world. I can't
Mm.
wait to see your cookbook whenever that happens. But where can our listeners find you and find this beautiful book? I mean, it's brand new. I mean, I feel like
Yes.
I knew about it ahead of time, but this is
Yeah.
brand new to you. You're on book
Brand new.
tour.
It
My
came out,
goodness.
yeah, September 9th. It's just a little
Uh-uh.
over a week out. Well, the book is pretty much everywhere in the sense of you can get it from any online retailer, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, et cetera, any place out there. I think Target, Walmart, even. And it's also available in audio and ebook. Audio, surprisingly, even though it's a visual book, you can get it in audio. So, and Christine Williams reads it and does a beautiful job. But it's kind of available everywhere, and you can get it from your local bookstore. I don't know if they'll all. It's out there, and you may have to ask your local bookstore to carry it. So, I highly recommend that as well. So.
Your website is
Yes, AngelaCorrell.com. So it's AngelaCorrell.com.
perfect. And you're on Instagram
Yes,
and
Instagram and Facebook.
Facebook. Okay, great.
Yes.
Well, it is a
Yeah.
phenomenal
And
book.
Pinterest. Oh, my
I
sister.
wanted to tell you one little thing about when I read your book. So I started this ritual of using a cup that I purchased in Montefollonico in the ceramic shop. And I
Yes.
make a latte. And then I sat down and read your book at the same time when it was really quiet.
Oh,
And I loved that moment in time because I made it kind of an event.
I
So thank
love
you
that.
for that,
Oh,
for
I love
in
that.
my life with your book. So
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Suzanne. I love what you're doing, and I'm so excited about you bringing people to the village to experience it. So I hope that goes really well.
thank you. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to hopefully maybe seeing you sometime in Kentucky or in
Yes.
Tuscany.
Yes.
And I wish you all the luck in the world with the sale of this book. It is so beautiful, and everyone will enjoy it so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.